I couldn't breathe as the words cut through me like a knife. "You're not included. My uncle, the man who raised me, had left me with nothing. No inheritance, no acknowledgment, nothing." My heart shattered, but deep inside, something darker stirred, an undeniable rage. They thought they could erase me, ignore me, pretend I didn't matter. But I knew a secret they never saw coming. The truth was hidden, locked away in my bedroom. And once I found it, I was going to burn everything they thought they could take from me. Hi, I'm Jenna, and this is my story. The air in the room was thick, heavy with unspoken words. I shifted in my seat, my palms sweaty, fingers nervously tapping on the edge of the paper I was clutching. My heart pounded against my chest, its rhythmic thumping somehow loud enough to drown out the murmurs of my relatives, all gathered in the cold, sterile room of the lawyer's office. The scent of polished wood and expensive leather mixed with the faint odor of stale coffee. Everything was too quiet, too tense. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I glanced around at the faces of my family. Some of them I barely knew. Some of them I had only seen a few times, but all of them were here now, staring at the lawyer with wide eyes. My uncle, Thomas, had always been the center of our family. His death had torn through us like a storm, and yet here we were, waiting for the final decree to be read. This was supposed to be closure, a moment where we could finally let go of the pain, but instead, all I felt was a deep, gnawing emptiness. My eyes flickered to the lawyer, Mr. Mendez, who stood at the head of the table, carefully adjusting his glasses. He'd been working with Uncle Thomas for years, handling his affairs, his investments, his properties. We all trusted him. He cleared his throat, his voice smooth, almost rehearsed as he began to speak. "I'm sorry for your loss. I know it's been a difficult time for everyone here." His voice wavered slightly, though it was clear he had delivered this line 1,000 times before. He adjusted his notes, then turned his gaze to the document in front of him. Thomas Ashford's last will and testament is as follows. I held my breath. The words came out slowly, methodically. The will was being read aloud, and I sat on the edge of my seat, wondering if Uncle Thomas had thought of me. My uncle and I had always been close, closer than anyone realized. I had spent years by his side, listening to his stories, helping him with whatever he needed. It was natural. We were family. So why did I feel like I was an outsider here? Why was it so easy to believe that maybe, just maybe, I was being forgotten? As Mr. Mendez read on, the names rolled off his tongue. The I choose relatives, some of whom I barely knew, were mentioned in the will. Each one seemed to get a little more than the last. Nothing unusual, at least at first. But then, he paused. My stomach dropped. And lastly, to my niece, Jenna Ashford. He looked up at me, his gaze cold, detached. I leave nothing. I froze. I swear I stopped breathing. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap, reverberating in my ears. Nothing. I felt the blood drain from my face as my mind scrambled to comprehend what had just been said. Nothing? How could that be? I was his niece. I had been a part of his life for as long as I could remember. I had spent weekends at his cabin, holidays at his house, listening to him talk about the world like no one else could. But in the end, I was nothing. I tried to swallow, but my throat was dry, tight. The room around me began to spin. The murmurs of my relatives blended into a distant hum. I couldn't focus on any of their faces, their reactions. I could only hear the echo of that one word. Nothing. Are you sure? My voice was a whisper, but it felt like I was shouting. I could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on me now. I couldn't look at them. I couldn't look at anyone. I turned to Mr. Mendez, my heart beating louder than ever. Is there a mistake? The lawyer's eyes softened, but there was no sympathy there. I'm afraid not, Miss Ashford. The will is clear. It was a punch to the gut. My mind raced, but nothing made sense. No one said anything at first. No one seemed willing to meet. My eyes. The silence in the room pressed down on me. I felt small. I felt invisible. I forced myself to breathe, but the room seemed to close in around me. I had to get out of there. My legs were shaky as I stood up, my chair scraping harshly against the floor. I didn't care. I had to leave. I couldn't stay. In that room with all of them looking at me, with the weight of that damn will sitting on my shoulders like a dark cloud. I walked out without a word. I don't even remember how I got back to my apartment. My mind was a haze, everything moving in slow motion. I remember the feeling of the cold doorknob in my hand, the way my keys jangled as I dropped them onto the counter. But beyond that, it was all a blur. I slumped down onto my couch, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on me. The air in my apartment felt too thick, as if I couldn't breathe right. My eyes locked onto the coffee table in front of me, the place where I had sat with my uncle all those years, laughing over coffee, talking about life. All those moments now felt like they were from someone else's life. I couldn't understand it. There had to be some mistake. How could he do this to me? There was a tight knot in my chest that wouldn't loosen. I wasn't just angry. I was confused, hurt, betrayed. My mind kept circling back to one question. Why? Why was I left out of the will? I thought I had been a part of his world. We had shared so much. How could he just erase me? It wasn't just about the money. I didn't need his fortune. But the exclusion, being cut out completely, it was a slap in the face. I had always believed I had a special place in his life, but now that place was nothing. The final reminder that family, at least mine, wasn't what I thought it was. I picked up my phone and dialed my mother's number, though I wasn't sure what I expected her to say. She picked up on the third ring, her voice instantly softening. Jenna? What's wrong? Mom, I don't know what to do. My voice trembled, and I bit my lip to stop it from breaking. I wasn't in the will. There was silence on the other end of the line. I could practically hear her processing the information. What do you mean, honey? He didn't leave you anything? I felt tears sting the corners of my eyes. I blinked them away, though I didn't know if it helped or made it worse. Nothing. Not a dime. Not a word. I don't understand. I thought we were close. He was my uncle. I don't know what to say. Her voice faltered, but there was something else in it too, something I hadn't heard before. It was almost as if she knew something I didn't. I frowned. What do you mean? What's going on, Mom? I don't know, Jenna. But there's something I've been meaning to tell you. You need to be careful. There's a lot about your uncle's will. That might not be as it seems. My heart raced. What do you mean? What's going on? She paused. I can't explain it right now, but you need to go to the house. Start looking for things, Jenna. The will might not be the whole story. I'll tell you more when I can, but I need you to trust me. Her words felt like a cryptic riddle, adding more confusion to an already chaotic situation. I didn't know if she was trying to protect me or if she knew something she wasn't saying. I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. Okay? I whispered. I'll go to the house. She sighed softly, and for a moment I could hear the weight of the years between us, of everything unsaid, of secrets long buried. Be careful, sweetheart. That's all I can say. The call ended, and I sat there, staring at the phone, trying to make sense of what she had said. What was going on with Uncle Thomas? What was she hiding? I didn't know how much of what she said I could trust. But I knew one thing. I had to find out the truth. I don't remember when I decided to go to my uncle's house, but it felt like the only thing left to do. I had to see it with my own eyes, whatever it was. something. About that, didn't sit right with me, and my mom's warning had only stirred up more confusion. The house stood there, just as it always had. Massive, dark, and quiet, tucked away at the end of a long, winding driveway, hidden by a thicket of old oak trees. I drove up in silence, the engine purring softly beneath me, but inside, my thoughts churned like a storm. I parked my car in the driveway and sat for a few moments, just staring at the front door. It felt wrong to walk in, like I wasn't supposed to be there. But it was my family's house, and it was mine too, in a way. I wasn't going to let some legal document tell me otherwise. When I walked through the door, the smell of old wood and leather hit me, the familiar scent that had always greeted me when I'd visited. But now it felt off, empty. I wasn't sure if it was the absence of my uncle or the weight of everything that had happened, but something in the air felt thick and suffocating. I moved slowly, every room, every corner seeming unfamiliar in a way it never had before. My fingers brushed the back of the couch where I'd sat countless times. The walls held pictures, old family portraits, so many faces that used to mean something. But now they seemed distant. I made my way to his study, a room I'd spent hours in when I was younger. He would always be sitting at that old oak desk, scribbling notes or reading. His worn leather chair was still there, empty now, staring at me like a reminder of the gap he left behind. That's when I saw it. A small envelope wedged between the pages of one of the many books that lined the bookshelves. It was plain, nothing unusual about it. But something in my gut told me this wasn't a coincidence. It had been placed there intentionally. I reached for it with trembling fingers, tearing open the flap. Inside was a letter, written in my uncle's familiar scrawl. My heart raced as I began to read. Jenna, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And there's something you need to know. You've always been close to me, and there's a part of me that wants to make sure you're taken care of. But the world is more complicated than it seems. If you've been left out of the will, it's not because I don't care. It's because I had to protect you from the people who would try to take everything from you. My hands shook as I continued. There are things about our family that you don't know. Things I should have told you long ago. But I couldn't. Not yet. Not until you were ready. There's a hidden part of this estate that you need to find. Trust no one but yourself, and don't let them convince you that you don't deserve to know the truth. Everything you need is in this house, hidden, in plain sight. Be careful, Jenna. There's more at stake here than just money. I stopped reading, my breath coming in sharp, shallow gasps. I could feel the words sinking into my bones, crawling under my skin. Hidden in plain sight? What was he talking about? And why would he say something like that? What was he protecting me from? I sat there for what felt like an eternity, the letter still clutched in my hands. I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me, the urgency in his words practically suffocating, but I couldn't make sense of any of it. Not yet. I took a deep breath and set the letter down on the desk, my mind swirling with questions I didn't have answers to. What was Uncle Thomas hiding? What was I supposed to find? I had a feeling I wasn't going to like the answers. But I had no choice. I had to keep going. There was more to this, and I was going to find out what it was, no matter the cost. The night was creeping in when I finally left my uncle's study, my mind a whirlwind of confusion and unease. The letter he left me felt like a weight around my neck, his final words, a cryptic puzzle I didn't know how to solve. But what choice did I have? I had to find out what he was warning me about. I paced back and forth in his living room, my gaze falling on the old family portraits hanging on the walls. Each image of my relatives seemed so innocent, so perfect. But the more I looked, the more I wondered how much of it was real. How much of the family I thought I knew was a facade. I sat down on the couch, my hands running over the letter again. I had to make sense of it. Trust no one but yourself. Those words echoed in my mind. I had always trusted my family, my mother, even the distant relatives who had attended the will reading. But if Uncle Thomas was right, everything I thought, I knew could be a lie. I glanced around the room trying to decide where to start, and then it hit me. The house had so many rooms, so many places where things could be hidden. I couldn't just sit here, lost in the uncertainty of it all. I needed to search. I needed to find whatever it was he wanted me to discover. I started with the desk in the study, rifling through drawers that had once been full of papers I didn't understand. But now it felt like I was looking for something much more important than old bills or tax documents. I pulled out a drawer full of receipts, pens, and old photographs. Nothing that caught my eye. But then I noticed a small box, hidden behind a stack of papers. It was a small wooden box, intricately carved, the edges worn smooth from years of use. I hesitated, unsure of what I might find, but my heart was pounding, urging me on. I opened it slowly, my breath hitching. Inside was a collection of old, yellowed letters and documents. I skimmed through them quickly, but none of them seemed to make sense. Most were addressed to my uncle from various people, lawyers, business, associates, old friends. But one letter caught my attention. It was dated years ago, long before my uncle's death. The handwriting was sharp, aggressive, unlike my uncle's usual neat scrawl. It was addressed to him personally, with a warning that sent a shiver down my spine. "We know what you've done, Thomas. If you ever go public with what you know, you'll regret it. There's too much at stake. You've been warned." I felt the blood drain from my face as I read the letter again. What was this about? What had my uncle gotten mixed up in? I had known that his life wasn't perfect, but this was a whole other level of danger. I quickly shoved the letter back into the box and slammed it shut. My hands were shaking as I looked around the room, as if expecting someone to appear and confront me. But there was nothing, no one. Just the heavy silence of the house, now pressing down on me with even more weight than before. But I couldn't stop. I had to keep going. I couldn't ignore what I'd just uncovered. The letter was a direct threat, and if someone had gone to this much trouble to intimidate my uncle, it meant they had something to hide. And now, it seemed like they were trying to bury whatever it was with him. I stood up, feeling an urgency I hadn't felt before. There had to be more. The will, the letter, the threats, it was all connected. But how? And why? I couldn't shake the feeling that my family had been keeping secrets from me for years, things I had never even suspected. I thought about my mother's cryptic words on the phone earlier. "There's something you don't know." She was right. I didn't know anything about the truth of my family's past, but I was about to find out. I walked out of the study and into the hallway, where the shadows were growing longer in the dim light. I glanced toward the staircase. Maybe there was something upstairs I'd missed, something my uncle had hidden away for years. I couldn't help but wonder if this was all part of some dark, twisted game that had been playing out long before I was even aware of it. Whatever it was, I wasn't backing down now. I wasn't going to let these secrets stay buried. Not when my uncle had trusted me enough to leave me this trail. Not when I was so close to uncovering the truth. I took a deep breath and started toward the staircase, the floorboards creaking under my weight. It felt like I was stepping into the unknown, a place where my whole world could shift at any moment, and I was ready to face whatever I found. I didn't know what I expected to find when I reached the second floor of my uncle's house. Maybe it was because the walls seemed to close in around me, or perhaps it was the weight of everything that had happened. I kept thinking that maybe, just maybe, there would be some kind of explanation. Something that made sense of the chaos swirling. In my mind, the upstairs hallway felt different, more personal. My uncle's presence was heavy here, lingering in the air like a part of him never really left. The rooms were filled with memories. There were bookshelves stacked high, the smell of old paper hanging in the air, just like his study downstairs. Family photos, faded yellowed curtains. A chair by the window where he used to sit and stare out over the garden, his mind wandering, lost in thought. I had never imagined that this quiet, humble space could be hiding so much. I walked past the bedrooms, my heart beating faster with every step. And then, as I turned the corner into the hallway that led to the master suite, something caught my eye, a small glimmer beneath the floorboard near the edge of the room. My breath caught in my throat. It was like a signal, a flashing neon light that screamed, "Look here!" I knelt down, hands shaking as I pried at the corner of the floorboard. It didn't take much effort for it to give way, a piece of wood that had been gently lifted from its place. I lifted it carefully, the floor creaking beneath me, and there, hidden underneath, was an old metal box, small and unremarkable at first glance. I hesitated, my mind racing. What if it was nothing? What if it was just some old trinket or piece of junk? But the weight in my chest, the way my pulse quickened as I held the box in my hands, told me it was something more. I had come too far to stop now. Slowly, I twisted. The rusty lock and the box opened with a soft click. Inside was a bundle of papers, old, yellowed, and clearly well kept. My hands trembling, I pulled them out one by one. The first few pages were letters, more of the cryptic correspondence I had found in the study. And then I found it. The second will. I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred as I unfolded. My fingers running over the thick paper. This wasn't the will I had seen at the lawyer's office. This was different. The language was clearer, more personal, like a last message meant only for me. My uncle's handwriting was bold, distinct. And as I began to read, the world around me began to dissolve. To my beloved niece, Jenna, if you are reading this, it means that I have passed on, and the family will have already been read. I want to explain why things have happened the way they have. I've always been a man of secrets, of silences, but some things should never be buried. You deserve to know the truth about this family, about what has been hidden from you for so long. I paused, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My uncle's words were chilling, yet comforting at the same time. I continued reading. The will that has been presented to you, Jenna, is not the one that I intended for you to see. It was changed. The people I trusted, the ones you call family, betrayed me, and in turn, betrayed you. I wanted to leave everything to you, to make sure that you were provided for. But in the end, I had to protect you from the truth. You will learn more in the coming days, but there are forces at play that are far beyond your understanding. I'm sorry I couldn't shield you from them. I stopped again, my fingers trembling, the words blurring as the tears began to fill my eyes. Betrayed me? What was he talking about? Find the records of the estate, Jenna. They are hidden, and once you uncover them, you will see the web of lies that has been spun around you. You will find out who has been manipulating the family, who has been using you. You have to stand strong. The truth will come for you, whether you are ready or not. I love you, my dear niece. You are stronger than you know. Trust yourself. Trust the journey. Thomas. The letter fell from my hands and I sat back on my heels, my mind reeling. The truth, the lies, betrayal. My family wasn't just broken, it was fractured, rotten at its core. But what had Uncle Thomas been trying to protect me from? Who was this they he was talking about? And why had he hidden this second will, this secret, for so long? I stared down at the papers in my lap, the weight of the truth sinking in, heavy and suffocating. But there was no turning back now. My uncle had made it clear. I was going to have to face the truth head on, no matter how painful it might be. I stood up, the box still clutched tightly in my hands. There was no time to waste. I had to keep going. The pieces were starting to come together, but I still didn't have the whole picture. And whatever I uncovered next, whatever darkness was hiding in the depths of this family, was going to change everything. The night felt like it stretched on forever. I barely slept, my mind buzzing with thoughts of the second will, of the cryptic message Uncle Thomas had left for me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his handwriting, the urgency in his words, the warning that echoed in my chest. Like a drumbeat I couldn't escape. I couldn't keep this to myself. I had to confront my family, especially my mother. She had been distant on the phone earlier, and now I knew why. She knew something. She knew more than she had told me, and I wasn't about to let her hide behind her silence any longer. I stood in front of the mirror in my apartment, my reflection staring back at me. The woman who had walked into Uncle Thomas's house the day before seemed like a stranger now. I wasn't the same person. The woman who stood there was different, stronger. I had no choice but to face my family, to confront the truth head on. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me from my thoughts. It was my mother. "Mom?" I answered, trying to steady my voice. "Jenna." Her voice was tentative, as if she was unsure of how to start. "I'm worried about you. You should be careful with what you're digging into. There are things you don't know. You have to stop before it's too late." I felt my pulse quicken. "No, I'm not stopping, Mom. I'm done living in the dark. Uncle Thomas left me something. There's a second will, and I found it. It's all there, everything he was trying to protect me from. You knew about this, didn't you? You knew something was wrong." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, deep and slow, like she was bracing for something she had been avoiding for years. "I didn't want to burden you with it, Jenna. I thought I could protect you, keep you safe from all of this." Her voice cracked. "But now that you've found the truth, I can't protect you anymore." I felt a surge of anger. Protect me? By keeping secrets? By letting me live in a lie all these years? I never wanted this for you. I never wanted you to get involved. "In this mess," she whispered, her voice shaking. "It's too dangerous. The people your uncle was dealing with, the things he got involved in, he was trying to protect you, Jenna. From them, from everything. And now that you've opened this door, there's no going back." "I have to know the truth, Mom. I said, my voice firm. "I have to know what happened to Uncle Thomas. I have to know what was really going on in our family." There was another long pause before she spoke again, quieter this time. "You need to come home, Jenna. You need to come to the house. I'll tell you everything, but you have to promise me that you'll be careful. This is bigger than you think. And it's not just about money. It's about people who will do anything to keep their secrets buried." I didn't hesitate. "I'm on my way." The drive to my mother's house felt like it took forever. Every mile I put behind me only seemed to bring me closer to a truth I wasn't sure I was ready to face. My thoughts spiraled, my heart raced. The words of that second will echoed in my mind. "You're stronger than you know. Trust yourself. Trust the journey." I didn't know what to trust anymore. I didn't know who to trust. By the time I arrived, at my mother's house, the sky had turned dark. The lights inside the house flickered warmly through the windows, but they couldn't disguise the tension in the air. I walked through the door, and she was waiting for me in the living room, sitting on the couch with her hands clenched tightly in her lap. She didn't speak right away. She just looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of regret and worry. I sat down across from her, my body tense, my mind racing. "Mom," I said, my voice low, "I need to know everything. I need you to tell me the truth about Uncle Thomas, about the family, about what's been hidden from me all these years." She took a deep breath, exhaling slowly. "Okay." But promise me you won't do anything rash. Promise me you'll listen to everything I have to say." "I promise," I said, though I wasn't sure if I believed the words myself. "But I need to hear it all." My mother nodded, her eyes dark with the weight of the years. "Your uncle was always involved in things that most people didn't understand. He had enemies, people who would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. He wasn't just some businessman, Jenna. He was a player in a much bigger game. And when things started to go south, he tried to protect you. That's why he changed the will." I sat there stunned as she continued. "After everything went down with the company, he found out things that could destroy us. The will, the one that was read to you, was altered. It wasn't his decision. Your uncle made a lot of enemies, Jenna, and when they realized he was trying to protect you, they made sure you were left out of the will. They couldn't let you inherit his estate. They couldn't let you be in control, so they erased you from it." I felt like I was going to be sick. "Who are these people, Mom? Who was Uncle Thomas protecting me from?" She closed her eyes like she was trying to summon the strength to speak. "I'll tell you, but only if you're ready to hear it." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to steady my nerves. "I'm ready." My mother's words hung in the air like an unspoken threat. The family I had grown up with, the family I thought I knew, was nothing like I imagined. It was all a facade, carefully constructed to hide the truth. The sense of betrayal I felt was overwhelming, but there was no time to wallow in it. I needed answers. I needed to know who these people were, who they had been to my uncle, and why they were willing to sacrifice me in their pursuit of power. I leaned forward, my voice urgent. "Who are they, Mom? Who are these people who were after Uncle Thomas?" She exhaled slowly, her face etched with years of regret. They were a group of business associates, ruthless, cutthroat people. Some of them were from the old days, back when your uncle was starting his company. He built it from the ground up, but along the way, he made alliances with the wrong people. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" I interrupted, my chest tightening. "Why didn't you warn me?" "I didn't think it was necessary," she replied, her voice quiet. "I wanted to protect you, Jenna. I wanted to believe that we were done with all of it. But your uncle never fully escaped them, not really. He tried to break free, but they always had their claws in him. And when he realized what they were planning, what they wanted from him, it was already too late." I sat back, trying to process what she was saying. "But why leave me out of the will? Why not just tell me what was happening?" She looked at me, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Because, Jenna, he knew they would come for you. If you had been named as the heir, they would have done everything in their power to make sure you never saw a dime of that inheritance. They would have come after you, hunted you down until they got what they wanted. Your uncle was trying to protect you. By leaving you out, he thought he could keep you safe. But he knew you would eventually figure it out. He knew you'd find the truth, and that's why he left you the second will." I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in my chest. This was bigger than I thought. Much bigger. The stakes weren't just about money. It was about survival. About a game that had been played for years, with my uncle, and now me caught in the middle. "How do you know all this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Did you know about the people he was dealing with? Did you know how dangerous they were?" She nodded slowly, her gaze dropping to the floor. "I knew more than I let on. Your uncle was trying to protect you from everything. He didn't want you to carry this burden. But I couldn't stop him. He thought that by keeping you in the dark, you'd be safe. But now you're here, and you've already found the second will. That means it's time, Jenna. Time for you to know everything." I could feel the walls closing in around me. I had been living in a lie, surrounded by people who had been hiding the truth for years. But now, I could see the pieces starting to fall into place. The mysterious letters, the cryptic messages. The second will, it was all part of the same puzzle. A puzzle I had no choice but to solve. "Who were they, Mom?" I asked again, my voice shaking with a mixture of fear and determination. Who was Uncle Thomas really running from? She looked at me, her eyes filled with a deep sadness that I could hardly bear to look at. The ones he was running from were a group of powerful businessmen, some of them with ties to the underworld. They were using your uncle's company as a front for something much darker. And when they realized he was going to expose them, they decided to make sure he stayed silent. That's why they altered the will. That's why they made sure you were left out. I could feel my stomach twist in knots. This wasn't just corporate greed. This was something much more sinister. I had no idea how deep this rabbit hole went. But I was already too far in to turn back now. I have to stop them, I said, my voice steady, despite the fear that threatened to overtake me. I have to make sure this doesn't continue. You don't know what you're dealing with. Jenna, my mother said, her voice cracking. These people will stop at nothing to protect themselves. You think they'll just let you walk away with the truth? They'll do anything to silence you. I've seen it before. I've watched your uncle struggle with it for years, and now they're going to come after you too. I shook my head, trying to steady my nerves. I don't care. I can't let this go. I have to take control of my own life now. I'm not going to let them win. I won't be their victim. My mother's eyes welled up with tears, but she didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her silence spoke volumes. She knew how dangerous this was. But she also knew there was no turning back for me. I had already stepped into this world, and there was no way out now. I had to see it through, no matter the cost. I stood up, my resolve hardening. I'm going to find out everything I can. I'll take down whoever is responsible for this. I won't rest until I know the truth. My mother's voice followed me as I turned to leave the room. Jenna, please be careful. Promise me you'll be careful. I didn't turn back. I couldn't. My mind was already racing with the next steps. I had no idea what kind of danger I was walking into, but I wasn't about to back down now. This wasn't just about a will anymore. This was about my family, my future, and most importantly, it was about taking back control, and I was ready to fight for it. I didn't sleep that night. How could I, after everything I'd learned? The weight of my mother's words lingered in my mind like a heavy fog. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was already in over my head. I was tangled in a web of lies, corruption, and betrayal, and yet I couldn't stop myself from plunging deeper into it. The next morning I set out to find more answers. I had no idea where to start, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't trust anyone, not even my own family. My mother had been hiding things from me, and Uncle Thomas, God, what else had he kept hidden? The first step was clear. I needed to get my hands on more of the documents related to my uncle's estate. I was certain there was something crucial I was missing. But the more I thought about it, the more the sinking feeling in my stomach deepened. If my mother's warnings were true, then I wasn't just up against greedy relatives trying to claim what wasn't theirs. I was dealing with people who would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. I drove back to my uncle's house, this time with a purpose. I had to go through his office again. I wasn't leaving until I found everything he had left behind. When I arrived, the house felt even colder than it had the day before. I walked up the stairs, my heart hammering in my chest. The air seemed thick with anticipation. I headed straight for the study, back to the room where everything had started. I paced through the familiar space, the overwhelming sense of his absence hitting me like a wave. I'd been here 1,000,000 times, but now it felt like a haunted house, full of memories I couldn't hold on to, full of secrets I didn't understand. My uncle's desk loomed in front of me, the drawers slightly ajar from the previous search. I opened them one by one, rifling through papers I'd already seen, legal documents, tax forms, old receipts, but then something caught my eye. A folder, tucked behind a pile of papers, looked out of place. I grabbed it, pulling it out with trembling hands, and opened it to reveal a stack of files, all neatly organized. But as I flipped through them, I noticed something strange. The names on the paperwork weren't just business associates or clients, they were connected to some of the people my mother had warned me about. Dangerous people. My heart skipped a beat as I read the names on the pages. People I recognized, names I'd seen in the news, connected to shady dealings, money laundering, and worse. The kind of people you didn't want to cross. People who had far more power than I could even fathom. And there, in the middle of the stack, was a letter addressed to my uncle, written in a sharp, urgent hand. Thomas, we know you've been making moves behind our backs. You can't outrun this forever. You have until the end of the month to retract your statements and leave the city, or we'll make sure your name is the least of your problems. I felt the blood drain from my face. This was it. This was the danger my uncle had been trying to shield me from. The stakes were far higher than I had imagined. These weren't just business deals. This was organized crime. This was a network of people who had built an empire on lies, deceit, and violence. I sat back in the chair, staring at the document spread out in front of me. My head was spinning. I had always known there was more to my uncle's life than I had been told, but this was a world I hadn't even known existed. The thought of my uncle being caught up in something so dark made me sick to my stomach. I could feel the walls closing in. These people weren't just going to let me walk away from this. They were watching me, waiting for me to make a move. And the second I did, I'd be in their sights. But I wasn't backing down. I had come too far. I couldn't let them win, not after everything my uncle had done to protect me. He'd left me the second will for a reason. He'd trusted me to finish what he'd started. I stood up abruptly, the papers scattered in front of me like evidence from a crime scene. I needed to take action, but first, I had to get out of this house. I couldn't stay here any longer, not with everything I had just uncovered. I grabbed the folder, stuffing it into my bag before quickly leaving the room. My heart was pounding in my chest as I made my way to the door. My hand was on the doorknob when I heard it, the sound of footsteps from behind me. I froze, my body tensing. The footsteps were too deliberate, too measured. Someone was here. I turned around slowly, my breath caught in my throat. There, standing in the doorway, was a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and had a look of cold detachment in his eyes. His gaze locked onto mine, and I knew instantly that he wasn't here to chat. Looking for something? His voice was low, controlled, like he had all the time in the world, but the threat in his tone was unmistakable. I swallowed hard, my fingers instinctively tightening around the strap of my bag. The man took a step closer, and I knew, with terrifying clarity, that this wasn't just about the will anymore. It was about survival, and the truth was something I wasn't sure I was ready to face. The air felt thick, like it was pressing in on me from all sides. I didn't know who this man was, but I could tell from the coldness in his eyes that he wasn't here for small talk. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. My heart raced as I tried to figure out what my next move should be. The man stepped into the room, his eyes never leaving mine. His presence filled the space, a dark force that made the walls feel even tighter. I was in his territory now, and I had no idea what he was capable of. "You don't belong here," he said, his voice cold and calm, as though this was all routine for him. "Your uncle's not around to protect you anymore." My stomach churned at the mention of Uncle Thomas. The man was right. He wasn't here to protect me. I was on my own. I wasn't sure whether I should try to run, fight, or attempt to talk my way out of it. My mind was a blur of fear, but there was something else too, a rising anger that refused to let me back down. I couldn't let these people intimidate me any longer. I had come too far to be scared off now. "I'm not leaving," I said, my voice a little more steady than I felt. "I'm going to find the truth. no matter what you think or what you do." The man's lips curled into a thin smile, but there was nothing reassuring about it. "You don't know what you're up against, do you? This isn't a game, sweetheart. You think you can just walk in here, digging through your uncle's things without consequences?" I didn't flinch. "I know exactly what I'm up against. You're just the first person who's going to try to stop me, but you won't be the last." The smile faded, replaced by something darker. "You're a lot braver than your uncle gave you credit for. But I'm afraid you're wasting your time. You really think you can take them down? The people who own this town, Jenna, who own your family's future? You've got no idea who you're messing with." The words hit me like a slap. I hadn't thought it through fully, but hearing it from him made it real. This wasn't just about some inheritance or money. It was about people with power and influence, people who could make my life disappear, without a second thought. People who were willing to hurt anyone who stood in their way. I forced myself to meet his gaze, refusing to back down. "I'm not afraid of you." His eyes darkened, and he stepped closer, his presence looming over me like a shadow. "You should be. You have no idea what you've uncovered. The things your uncle was involved in were much bigger than you ever realized. This is your last warning, Jenna. Walk away and forget you ever saw any of this." "I can't do that," I said firmly. "I'm not afraid of you or anyone else who tries to silence me. You don't get to decide what I know or what I do." He sighed, almost as if he were disappointed by my defiance. "Stubborn, just like your uncle. Well, you'll find out soon enough. They always do." I stood frozen, my mind spinning with his words. Who was this man working for? Who were these people who had so much power that they could control everything around me? I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I couldn't afford to let my emotions get the best of me. I had to keep my head. Suddenly, he stepped back, his cold eyes narrowing. "But you won't be alone for long. We're always watching. Remember that." Without another word, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving me standing there in stunned silence. I could still feel the weight of his presence pressing on me, the threat of what was to come hanging heavy in the air. I couldn't ignore it. This wasn't just about money anymore, it was about power, and I had unwittingly stepped into a war. I didn't fully understand. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't let fear control me. My uncle had left me the second will for a reason. He had entrusted me with the truth, my truth, and I wasn't about to let anyone take that from me. I grabbed the folder of documents, shoving it into my bag. I couldn't stay here any longer, not with the looming threat of what I had just uncovered. But I couldn't leave without one last thing, one last confrontation. I walked swiftly down the hallway, my feet moving faster than my mind could process. I had to find my mother. She was the last person who might have the answers I needed. She had known something, and I was done waiting for her to come to me with the truth. It was time to confront her, head on. I drove to my mother's house in a daze, the world outside my window a blur of unfamiliar streets and flickering streetlights. My mind was racing, the events of the past few days playing on a loop. The man in my uncle's house, the cryptic warning, the threat in his eyes, kept repeating in my head. I could almost hear his voice in my ear, telling me that I didn't know what I was up against, that I was going to regret pushing forward, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't walk away now. No matter how dangerous it had become, no matter how much the odds seemed stacked against me, I was in this for the long haul. My uncle had left me the second will for a reason. He had trusted me with the truth, and now I was the one who had to finish what he had started. When I pulled into my mother's driveway, the front porch light flickered on. It felt like an omen. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I wasn't going to let fear control me. I had come this far. I had to face her. I knocked once, twice, and then pushed the door open. My mother was sitting at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea, her face pale and weary. She had been expecting me, but she didn't look relieved to see me. Instead, there was an almost resigned look in her eyes, as if she knew what was coming. I closed the door behind me, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. No more running from the truth. I needed answers, and I needed them now. "Mom," I said, my voice steady but firm. "I know you've been hiding things from me. I know there's more to Uncle Thomas's death, to the will, and to everything that's happened. You've known about these people, these criminals. I need you to tell me the whole truth, right now." She didn't say anything at first. She just stared at me, her gaze distant. I could see the weight of guilt in her eyes. She was holding something back, something important. But I wasn't going to let her keep hiding from me. "Mom, please. I'm not leaving until you tell me what's going on. What did Uncle Thomas get mixed up in? Why did he leave me out of the will? And who are these people who are trying to silence me?" Finally, she sighed, setting her tea down on the table, her hands shaking slightly. She was torn. I could see it in the way she avoided my gaze. After a long moment, she spoke, her voice low and shaky. "I didn't want to tell you," she began, her voice faltering. "I thought it would be better for you to stay away from all of this. Your uncle tried so hard to protect you, Jenna. He didn't want you to get involved in the family business. He knew how dangerous it was. He knew that once you stepped into this world, there was no way out. But you had to find out for yourself, didn't you?" Her words stung. I hadn't wanted this. I hadn't chosen this life. But I was here now, and I had no choice but to see it through. I nodded, waiting for her to continue. "He was involved with people who had their hands in everything. Real estate, finance, imports and exports, things that were all a front for other businesses." She hesitated again, as if the words were too heavy to speak. "He was connected to people who did things that were illegal, dangerous things. And when he found out what they were really up to, he tried to distance himself. He wanted out. But you can't just walk away from these kinds of people." I felt a sickening twist in my gut. What kind of people? Who were they? What was he involved in? She closed her eyes, her face pale. I don't know all the details, Jenna, but your uncle was involved with some very powerful people, dangerous people. They had connections everywhere, law enforcement, politics, business. They were using his company to launder money, to move things around without anyone noticing. But when your uncle figured it out, when he realized what was happening, he tried to get out. He tried to clean up his life. I felt my breath catch in my throat. And they couldn't let him? She shook her head slowly. No, they couldn't. Once you're in for life. And when he tried to leave, they came after him. They came after all of us. I sank into the chair across from her, my mind spinning. This was worse than I'd imagined. My uncle hadn't just been a businessman. He'd been involved in something far darker. And now, it was all falling on me. It was up to me to fix this, to uncover the truth, to bring it all to light. But why the second will? I asked, my voice breaking slightly. Why didn't he just go to the police? Why leave everything to me in secret? My mother looked at me, her expression filled with sorrow. Because he couldn't go to the police. If he had, they would have killed him. He knew too much. He was too close to the people behind it all. So he made sure you would be taken care of. He didn't trust anyone else to keep you safe. He had to leave the truth hidden until you were ready. And now, you've uncovered it. But Jenna, you have to understand. You're in danger. They won't stop. They won't let you take the truth from them. I sat in stunned silence, the weight of her words pressing down on me. This wasn't just a family issue anymore. It was a matter of survival. My uncle had died trying to protect me, and now I was being asked to do the same. But could I? I won't back down, Mom, I said finally, my voice steady. I have to finish this. I won't let them win. She nodded slowly, her eyes filled with tears. I don't want you to, but I can't stop you. Just be careful, Jenna. Please. I stood up, my heart heavy, but my resolve unshaken. The pieces were starting to come together. I had uncovered the truth, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. There was still more to uncover, more to fight for. And no matter how dangerous it became, I couldn't stop now. I'll be careful, I said softly. But I'm not stopping. The air was thick with tension as I left my mother's house. Her words echoed in my mind, a constant reminder of how deep I had gotten into this world of lies and danger. I had already stepped into something I couldn't walk away from. My uncle's death, the second will, the dark business dealings that had come to light, none of it could be undone. I could only move forward, but moving forward meant facing the consequences of my choices. The drive back to my apartment was quiet, the hum of the car engine the only sound. My thoughts kept circling back to the threat I had received from that man at my uncle's house. He was right about one thing. I had no idea what I was truly up against. These weren't just business dealings. This wasn't just about the money or the inheritance. It was about a web of corruption that had been growing for years, a network of power and influence that stretched far beyond anything I had ever imagined. I had to find a way to break it. I had to find the truth, even if it meant putting myself in danger. As I entered my apartment, I was struck by how quiet it seemed. It was a small, unassuming space, but it felt like a sanctuary in comparison to the storm that had taken over my life. I walked across the room, my eyes scanning the contents of the table, papers, old bills, some legal documents I hadn't bothered to look at. My mind was too consumed by everything else to focus on them. But then my gaze landed on something that stopped me in my tracks. It was an envelope, a plain white envelope with my name written in neat, familiar handwriting. My heart skipped a beat as I picked it up. It wasn't from my uncle. It wasn't from anyone I recognized. But the handwriting was eerily familiar. I tore it open with trembling hands, pulling out the contents. A single sheet of paper. I unfolded it and read the words. "You've come too far, Jenna. We know everything. You think you're safe, but you're not. Stop now, and we'll leave you alone. Keep digging, and you won't live to regret it." The message was clear. They were watching me. They knew I was getting closer to the truth, and they were ready to do whatever it took to silence me. I stood there, frozen, the paper crumpling in my hands. My heart was pounding in my chest. It wasn't just an empty threat anymore. They were getting desperate. They had seen me as a threat long before I even realized it. And now, they were coming for me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I couldn't let fear control me. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about my uncle. It was about the people who had betrayed him, the ones who had killed him to protect their secrets. And now, I was the one who had to take them down. I grabbed my phone, dialing a number I had been avoiding for days. The call went through after a few rings, and I could hear the familiar voice on the other end. "Jenna?" my mother said softly, her voice filled with worry. "What's wrong?" "They're coming for me, Mom," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "They know I'm getting too close. They left me a message, a threat." There was a long silence. Before she spoke again, "You knew it was coming. I warned you, Jenna. I warned you that this would never be easy." "I can't stop now," I said, my voice firm. "I'm not going to let them win. I can't just walk away." "I know," she whispered, "but you need to be careful. You can't do this alone. You have to trust someone, Jenna. You need allies. There are people in your uncle's life who can help, people who know what's going on, but you have to be careful who you trust." I felt a surge of frustration. How do I know who I can trust? How do I know who's on my side? "You'll know," she said, her voice steady. "You'll have to be careful, but you can't do this without help." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. I didn't know who I could trust anymore. Every step I took seemed to lead me deeper into a world of lies and deceit. But my mother was right. If I was going to get through this, I couldn't do it alone. I needed to find people who were willing to fight for the truth, people who knew how to navigate this dangerous game. "I'll figure it out," I said, my voice resolute. "I won't back down." "I know you won't," my mother replied, softly. "But please, Jenna, be careful. You have no idea how dangerous these people really are." "I will," I promised, though I wasn't sure I believed my own words. I hung up, the weight of the conversation settling heavily on my shoulders. This was it. There was no turning back now. I had no choice but to move forward, to face the consequences of my actions. But even as I braced myself for what was coming, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to stop until I had uncovered the full truth, no matter what it cost. The weight of the threat was suffocating. Every corner of my apartment felt like it was closing in on me, the walls pressing in as though I couldn't breathe. I could feel their eyes on me, watching my every move, waiting for me to slip up, to make a mistake. The message they had left, it wasn't just a warning anymore. It was a statement. They were letting me know they had the power to destroy everything I had left. But I wasn't going to let them. I couldn't. I had come too far to back down now. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my shaking hands. I wasn't going to let fear take over. I couldn't let them win. They wanted to scare me, to intimidate me into giving up, but that was the last thing I was going to do. I had the truth. I had the second will, the evidence that everything they had built was based on lies. And I wasn't going to let their threats stop me. I had a decision to make. I could keep digging, keep pushing forward, knowing that the danger was real and that I couldn't predict what would happen next. Or I could walk away. I could leave it all behind and forget about my uncle, about the family secrets, about the people who had killed him to protect their empire. But I wasn't going to walk away. I couldn't live with myself if I did. My uncle had trusted me to carry on what he had started. He had left me the second will, hidden the truth for me to uncover, because he believed that I could finish what he had begun. I wasn't going to disappoint him. I grabbed my jacket, throwing it on quickly before I made my way to the door. I had to move fast. The threats, the danger, they were only going to escalate from here. If I didn't act now, I might not get another chance. As I stepped out into the cool night air, I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins. I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to hide. I was going to confront whatever came my way, because I was done being afraid. Done letting them control me with their lies and their power. I needed to find someone I could trust, someone who could help me fight back. I had already been to my mother. She had warned me about the dangers, but there had to be more people out there who could help. My uncle had spent years trying to keep this family business a secret, but he wasn't the only one who knew about it. There had to be people who were still loyal to him, people who knew the real story and wanted to see justice done. I decided to start with one of my uncle's old friends, a man named David. He had worked with my uncle for years, and I knew he had been in on some of the business dealings. I didn't know how much he knew about the criminal side of things, but he might be the one person who could give me a lead. He had been a part of my uncle's life for a long time, and if anyone knew how to navigate this mess, it was him. I pulled up to the address I had for him, a small office building in the city. It looked like a place where deals were made, where things were handled quietly, away from the public eye. I stepped out of my car and walked toward the door, my heart pounding. I wasn't sure what kind of reception I would get. He might turn me away, or he might be able to help me. Either way, I had to try. I knocked on the door, the sound echoing in the empty hallway. Moments later, the door creaked open, and I was met by a man in his late 50s with graying hair and a stern, guarded expression. His eyes flickered with recognition as he took me in. "Jenna," he said, his voice low. "What are you doing here?" "I need your help," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I know you worked with my uncle. I know you were involved in the business. I need to know what happened, what was really going on." He stared at me for a long moment, as though debating whether to let me in or turn me away. Finally, he stepped aside, gesturing for me to enter. "Come in," he said, his voice softening slightly. "We need to talk." I walked into the office, my pulse quickening as I sat down across from him. This was it. This was my chance to learn the truth. No more secrets. No more lies. David took a deep breath, his hands folding in front of him. "Your uncle was a good man," he said, his voice low. "But he was tangled up in something much bigger than either of us ever realized. The people he got involved with, there, was no way out, and he knew that." "Then why didn't he tell me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why didn't he warn me?" "He didn't want to involve you," David said, shaking his head. "He didn't want you to get dragged into this. He tried to keep you out of it for as long as he could, but the deeper he got, the harder it was to pull away. He couldn't. Just leave, not without consequences." "Who are these people?" I pressed. "Who killed him? Who's behind all of this?" David hesitated, his eyes flickering with a mixture of fear and regret. "I can't give you names, Jenna. Not yet. But I can tell you this. They're dangerous. These aren't just businessmen. These are people with connections, people who can make anyone disappear. Your uncle tried to take them down, but in the end, it was too much. He knew it was coming." "I won't stop until I get the truth," I said, my voice unwavering. "You knew him. You knew what he was trying to do. You owe it to him, and you owe it to me to help." David's eyes softened, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something like regret in his gaze. "You're in deeper than you think, Jenna. But if you're serious about this, if you really want to take them down, then I'll help. But you have to promise me one thing." "What's that?" I asked, my heart pounding. "You have to be careful. These people will stop at nothing. They'll come after you, and they won't hesitate to hurt anyone close to you." "I'm ready," I said. "I have to do this. I can't let them win." David nodded slowly. "All right, then let's get started. But remember, there's no turning back now." The days that followed were a blur of frantic planning and quiet, tense meetings. David had become my only ally in this fight, and every conversation we had was like walking a tightrope. The deeper I dug into my uncle's past, the more dangerous it became. We were moving closer to the heart of the empire my uncle had tried to escape from, the web of deceit and crime that had ensnared him, and now me. David was cautious, careful with every step he took, but he never hesitated to help me. He knew too much to stay out of it now. The stakes had grown so high that there was no way out. But even as we gathered information, my mind kept racing back to the night I'd received that first threat. It was real. They were watching me. They knew I was getting closer, but I wasn't going to back down. The final confrontation was coming. One evening, after hours of poring over documents and cross-referencing names, David pulled me aside. His face was grim, more serious than I'd ever seen him. "Jenna, it's time," he said. "We've got enough to go after them. The people your uncle was involved with, they're powerful, but we found their weak spots. We know who's pulling the strings." I nodded, my stomach tightening with both fear and resolve. The truth was within reach, but so was danger. I could feel it in the air. The time had come to take action. There would be no more half measures, no more hiding. I was going to expose them, no matter the cost. David handed me a file. Inside were the names, the faces, the connections. Everything I needed to take them down, but I knew it wasn't going to be that easy. These people weren't going to let their empire fall without a fight. "They'll come for us, Jenna," David warned. You have to be prepared for the consequences. I swallowed hard, the weight of his words pressing down on me. But I didn't flinch. I was prepared for what was coming. We spent the rest of the night finalizing the plan. We'd contact the right people, gather evidence, and ensure everything was airtight before making our move. The next morning, I was ready. There was no turning back now. I met David at a cafe early the next day, a small, unassuming place where we could talk in relative privacy. We sat at a table near the back, the weight of our conversation hanging in the air. I could see the worry in David's eyes. He knew how dangerous this was, how far-reaching these people's influence was. He'd seen it before. "They'll try to stop us," he said, looking over his shoulder as if expecting someone to be watching. "But this is our shot, Jenna. We have to take it." "I'm ready," I said, my voice steady. The nerves were still there, but they were buried under the anger and the need for justice. "We have to do this. For my uncle, for me, for everyone they've hurt." David nodded, though he looked apprehensive. "I'll make the calls. We'll have to move quickly." We didn't speak much more after that. We both knew what was at stake. I could feel it, the tension in the air, the sense of inevitability that hung over me like a storm cloud ready to burst. But I had no choice. I was going to fight, even if it meant risking everything. As we got up to leave, David gave me one last piece of advice. "You need to be careful who you trust. Now I'm not sure who's in this with us and who's playing us. If you have any doubts, don't trust them, and keep your guard up at all times." I nodded, taking his words to heart. Trust had become a luxury I couldn't afford. I had to stay sharp, stay focused, and make sure I didn't fall into their trap. The next few days were a blur of action. David made his calls, I contacted the people we could trust, and we began to put the pieces of the puzzle together. It felt like I was walking on the edge of a knife, every step precarious, every decision loaded with consequence. But I wasn't scared, not anymore, not when the truth was so close. Finally, the day came when everything was set. We had enough to take down the entire operation. The connections, the money laundering, the blackmail, and the people behind it all. It was time to expose them for what they really were. David and I sat in the car, the final piece of the plan, in motion. My heart was racing, but it wasn't fear that gripped me. It was anticipation. This was the moment I had been waiting for. This was the moment I had to make sure I didn't fail. "We're doing this," David said, his voice steady. "We're going to take them down." I looked at him, my eyes fierce. "We are, and we won't stop until they pay for everything they've done." We got out of the car and made our way toward the building that would change everything. The information we had, the evidence we had gathered, would bring everything crashing down. This was it, the moment of reckoning. But as we approached the entrance, I saw a shadow moving in the corner of my eye. My heart stopped. "David," I whispered, my voice tight with fear. "We're not alone." Before he could respond, I felt a sharp pain in my side, a searing, hot pain that spread quickly through my body. I staggered, gasping for air, my hand instinctively going to my side. Blood was pouring from the wound, staining my clothes, my hands. David reached out to catch me, but I could feel the darkness closing in. "You were warned," a voice said, cold and detached. The world blurred around me as I sank to my knees, my vision fading. The fight was far from over, but I wasn't sure if I would make it through the final confrontation. I didn't know how long I was unconscious. When I finally came to, everything felt disjointed, like I had been pulled from one reality into another. My head throbbed, my side ached with a dull, persistent pain. I could feel a cool breeze against my skin, the scent of antiseptic in the beats. Air. I blinked slowly, my vision adjusting to the dim light. I was in a hospital room, sterile and silent except for the beep of machines in the background. My body felt heavy, like I was weighed down by the gravity of everything that had happened. David was sitting in a chair next to my bed, his face pale and worried. His eyes locked onto mine the moment I stirred, a wave of relief washing over him. "Jenna," he said softly, his voice breaking. "You're awake." I tried to speak, but my throat was dry, my mouth parched. I managed a weak nod, trying to push through the fog in my brain. "What happened? How did I get here?" David leaned forward, his face etched with concern. "You were shot. One of the men who had been following us. He got to you before we could make the call. I thought—" He paused, swallowing hard. "I thought I lost you." The pain in my side flared up as I shifted, but I ignored it. I had to focus. I couldn't let this be the end. "The plan. Did it work? Is everything still in motion?" David hesitated for a moment before answering. "Yes. The evidence we collected, the connections we made, it's all in the hands of the authorities now. We did what we needed to do. They'll be exposed. They can't hide anymore." I closed my eyes, letting the relief wash over me. My uncle's death, the years of secrets, the lies, all of it had been for something. The pieces had fallen into place. The people who had killed him, who had tried to silence me, they would no longer be able to escape the truth. "I didn't do this alone," I whispered, feeling the weight of my uncle's legacy. "He's the one who got me this far." David nodded, a somber expression on his face. "Your uncle was a man who lived with a lot of regrets, Jenna, but he also had a lot of courage. You've got that same courage. You're stronger than you." Think! Tears threatened to spill from my eyes, but I fought them back. I wasn't a victim. I had fought back. I had survived. And now I had a chance to make sure my uncle's death wasn't in vain. "We did it," I said, my voice steady. "Now, despite the pain, they're going to pay for what they've done." David smiled softly, though his eyes were still filled with concern. "You've done more than anyone could have imagined, Jenna. But there's still more to be done. It's just the beginning. These people won't stop. You'll need to keep your guard up." I nodded, the weight of his words settling deep in my chest. The danger wasn't over yet, but I wasn't afraid anymore. The road ahead was uncertain, yes, but I had learned that I could face it. I had learned that I was capable of fighting back. And that was something I would carry with me for the rest of my life. "You're right," I said softly, "but I'm ready. Whatever comes next, I'll face it head on. I'm not backing down." For a moment, we sat in silence, the weight of everything hanging between us. But it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was the kind of silence that comes after a storm, when you know you've survived, when you know the worst is behind you, even if the road ahead is still uncertain. David finally stood up, his hand resting on my shoulder for a brief moment. "I'm going to make sure the right people are in place to protect you. You've got people in your corner now." I gave him a small smile, my heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you for everything." He nodded, then turned to leave the room, but not before pausing at the door. "We'll get through this, together." I sat there for a long time after he left, the beeping of the machines and the quiet hum of the hospital room filling my ears. I had come so close to losing everything, to losing my life. But somehow I had survived. I had fought back, and I had uncovered the truth. And now, with everything I had learned, I was ready to move forward. The people who had taken my uncle's life, who had tried to take mine, were going to pay. I wasn't going to stop until they did. There would be consequences. There would always be consequences for actions like theirs. But I knew now that I was strong enough to face whatever came next. The fight wasn't over, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I had the truth. And in the end, That would be enough.